Listen to a special segment on Poptarts in my VCR. I'm Max Schultz or DJ M Rob, whatever we
I'm
go by.
I'm Chris or DJ CJ.
And we've got two comedians with us to promote my Sunday Fun Day showcase on January 23rd, next Sunday. We're joined with Casey McNeal and Tyler Durniak. Thank you guys for being here.
Yay! Happy to
Yeah,
have
thanks
you.
for having us.
Absolutely. So I'm psyched. This is the third showcase that I'll be hosting. First time at One Broadway Collaborative for the showcase shows, at least. But we're doing a showcase at, like I said, One Broadway Collaborative in Lawrence, where we've got 6 comedians, including myself. We've got Dan Donahue, Robbie Partridge, Dan Butler, Jacqueline Wall, and then the two gentlemen we're joined with, Casey McNeal and Tyler Durniak. It should be a lot of fun. I'm excited for it. These last few showcases I've done have gone pretty well. They've been fun at the very least, and this should be too. How I know the answer to this question, I think, but I'll just ask it for listeners. How long have you guys been doing stand up?
I've been doing it for about I want to say 5 years, including the pandemic. So really more 3.5 because of the quarantining and everything.
Yeah. What about you, Casey?
Well, I have a kind of a weird story because I started 30 years ago, about 1991, and I went till about 95 on the small stage, and then I moved into public speaking for 20 years in between. And so I just came back to doing, regular club stand up in like 2000 and December of 2017, so almost 2018. So I'm like a 30-year guy and a 5-year guy all at the same time or something like that. I mean, because public speaking that I did, it's still comedy because it was, but it's like being a humorist. There's an old joke, the difference between a stand-up and a humorist, $3,500 an hour. So like I couldn't turn it down, but the audiences are a lot softer, and it's a hacky kind of a comedy in a way, or it can be, and you can get away with hacky comedy or dad kind of comedy in those environments. But so it's sort of like stand up, but not at all the same.
Right on. Chris, I know you had a couple of questions prepared, I believe.
Yeah, I had a couple questions I could throw out there. I guess the last stand-up comedian we interviewed was, as far as I remember, was back when I was a freshman on the show. We interviewed Lynn
We had
McGurk.
Lynn McGurk on.
One of the questions I asked him that I always like to get the answer to when I'm talking to comedians is, you have this hypothetical scenario where you can sit at a coffee table, you can have coffee with 3 comedians who are either dead or alive. Who would they be and why? I guess we'll start with Tyler.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. So definitely for me, Rodney Dangerfield would be a big one. Him and Mike Birbiglia, I think, had really big influence on me when I was growing up. And it sucks. I kind of want to. I don't want to necessarily break the rules of the question, but if we could do just like a comedy group as one person, because I'm a huge fan of Firesign Theater and that kind of weird sketch comedy stuff. So that, or Tim Heidecker or Eric Wareheim, one of the two, but not both together.
Awesome. I like those three, but I laughed in the middle of it because I actually just posted on Facebook today my photo I took with Mike Birbiglia a few years ago. Super cool guy.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've never gotten the chance to meet him, but he's always been a huge stand-up influence of mine. From I think it was Two Drink Mike was the first album of his that I had. It was the first album I got that wasn't bought for me by my dad.
Yeah.
So it was a big part of my my sort of comedy childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, Sleepwalk with Me is my big Birbiglia record.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, Casey, what was your answer?
3, huh? Well, I might have chose Dangerfield too, Tyler. That was a good one. Because I was, when I was young, which was 1,000 years ago, stand up wasn't the same as it is now. You know, like you had guys that came and did time on the Tonight Show, and if you didn't see them on the Tonight Show or in like a Playboy Club, you just didn't see these guys. You know, so my early influences were like I said, I would have chose Dangerfield, but I might go with Jackie Mason because he was one that really stood out to me as being just laugh out loud funny. You know, in this like in the '60s and stuff. And another guy that was actually very influential on me, though I don't know that I recognized it until recently, was a comic that you guys might not know about named Tom Lehrer. I don't know if you guys know who Tom Lehrer was.
Oh yeah,
was a guy.
He
was a Harvard dude, and he used to play the piano and write these songs that were super clever, and perform these songs live that he wrote that were about politics and different hot topics and stuff of the day. I guess that's National Brotherhood Week and New Math and all those songs. And that was like 1965, this guy's writing this kind of stuff. And he's really controversial in his time. And I love that guy. And the third, I got to go with Norm Macdonald.
Yeah.
Say Norm's a goat.
Oh, definitely.
I never got a chance to work with him either, but he was an early influence of mine when I was starting stand-up and that. Because I started in like 91, and he was an early influence of mine also. Steve Wright too, I guess, if I was going to add a fourth in there.
Yeah.
Not because I could write like
Yeah.
he still shows up once in a while. You got to look out for him. He'll walk
I know. I've never met him, but like I know a bunch of comedians who have in the area.
Yeah, he'll walk in the back of your room all the time. But he just looks like this burly. He looks like a homeless guy. He's got this big beard and his long hair and shit. You got to be looking for him, kind of,
Yeah, you got to be looking for him because he's always sneaking up on people. I've heard.
Yeah,
and he's dangerous.
Back of the bar. Yeah.
It's funny to think Stephen Wright is dangerous.
Second question I have, I guess. I assume both of you have probably played at quite a few venues, and I'm wondering if any of them really stands out above the others as to, I guess, the favorite venue you've performed at, and again, why?
A favorite?
Yeah.
Tyler, you go.
All right. Well, I'd have to say one of the best venue. Are we looking for like specific places or specific types of shows?
Yeah, best or favorite. Though, let's make at least that distinction, right? Because the best venue I've ever been in is not my favorite, but it's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
it's not my favorite.
And there's there's some places where it's a giant sort of bar show and it's a huge crowd and they're a ton of fun to do. But a lot of the times, the ones I enjoy are sort of the weirder kind of small shows where they just pack everyone in like sardines. I did a show at the in the back room of a thrift store, like a high-end thrift store, and it was this weird, unair conditioned in the middle of summer in New Hampshire, and just 40 people packed into a small room, just pouring sweat. I think the glare from the spotlight off of my sweat was distracting the crowd from me, but it was just so fun, and the crowd was into it, and you were just one of the best places to do comedy, I think, are those kind of weird intimate venues.
Right on.
Yeah, I do love the weird venues.
I guess it just never occurred to me the idea of doing comedy from some place that like isn't a bar or a comedy club. Like the idea of doing it in a thrift store or something like that never really came to my mind.
Oh man, one of my favorite. I know I'm not the one asking or being asked the question. But one of my favorites. I did this place in Florida that was like a hot dog stand / medical marijuana petition site / tea shop. It was just like the three things this retired woman loved to do were those three things. It was like, I'll make it one store. But they had this awesome outdoor stage that, like, it was great. It was bizarre, and everyone there was weird, but like the good kind of weird, and that was great.
Yeah, something about a hot dog stand and a tea shop doesn't gel with me. I don't it seems like a weird combination to have tea with a hot dog. I
Oh,
don't know.
super weird. I did it. It was very weird.
Sounds to me like they didn't even know what business they wanted to be. They were
That's
just
what
like,
that's what it felt like. And the thing too, and like I don't know how to like explain this in the story or like me describing it really, is that it was those three things that I listed, but it was massive. Like the building it was in, the property they rented or owned or whatever was enormous, but all they sold were teen hot dogs.
Did they have, like, I know like a restaurant will have a wine pairing. Did they have, like, were they pairing specific teas to specific types of hot dogs? Like, is a nice green tea good with a bratwurst? I don't know.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
All right, Casey, what was your answer to that question?
Well, oh shit. Like I say, like what Tyler's saying is some of those smaller venues and stuff can be some of my favorites. I guess I got to go. I've been doing this a long time, so it's hard to narrow down favorites. But I mean, the first club that I started in was a pretty big club, but not like it was in a college town, so it was like not a well-known club, but could seat 300 and they would frequently pack out. And that was a favorite because it was my regular room. You know, once I advanced from open mic to club comic, I was in there every week, and so that was like my home room. And there was only one club in town, you know. And I started in Utah, you know.
Wow.
But my favorite though of late, I'd have to say, is the Mutiny Radio Comedy Festival. When I do the Mutiny Radio Comedy Festival in California, I've done it 2 years now, and the Mutiny Radio is like what was pirate radio in the old days. They first started the pirate thing and that, and then Mutiny Radio took over, and now the lady that runs Mutiny Radio is also a comic, and so she hosts all these shows. She has this festival, and Mutiny Radio, the place. Have you done this, Tyler? Have you done it yet?
I have not done it yet.
Okay, I should definitely refer you to get curious for it. The place will only seat like 12 people in the actual radio studio, you know, but she hosts shows in like outdoor venues and clubs and stuff all around the city. So I do like 25 shows in a week there, you know, bars and clubs all over. Like I do Milk Bar and I do, you know, El Rio and like all kinds of really nice venues, and she does these stuff. But right in that little place where they do the radio and you know, you go in and it's a really small little group that comes in there, a lot of fun. Probably the best venue that I ever did was Catch a Rising Star at the MGM in Vegas, because it's so enormous and it's a big name thing. As I used to play Vegas a lot, I did the Improv at the Riviera in Vegas, which is also a casino hotel. You know, I have my name on the marquee somewhere under prime rib, but it wasn't the same as some of the other places. Steve Sharippa, by the way, was the entertainment director back then, but long before The Sopranos or any that he Blue Bloods or any of that. Like, he's a lot nicer now. I've heard. I don't know, but the MGM. I'll tell you a very short, quick story too. When I did the MGM the first time. Like I said, the theater is enormous, and I did a matinee show on a Saturday. There was like 35 people in a theater that seats like 500, and they were scattered all over the room. It felt like 35 anyway. They're scattered all over the room. I got out there and I just bombed, and I sort of in my mind I had us, oh, you know, the crowd and this, and then Kermit Apio got out there after me and just killed the set. And I remember as we're leaving, the manager of that club. She, you know, they always have something to say to you. If you do really great, they'll say like, thanks. You know, if you do really, you know, if you do great, they'll say good job. If you do good, they'll say thanks. If you don't do so good, they say something else. So we're walking out. She says to Kermio, she says, oh, that was fantastic. Great job, man. And then she looks at me and says, nice suit. So yeah, so that was my experience in my best venue. That's why it's not my favorite.
What an answer.
Was the suit nice?
No, not particularly.
Oh. So
just one of those things that, like, you know, you ever seen these comics? They go to the club guy, they just suck, you know, and then they're up to the manager after the room. Hey, what do you want me to come back as? A middle, a feature?
Oh man.
How about where you guys draw material from? I know there are quite a few comedians that just are able to take real life scenarios and just immediately turn it into an extremely funny story, and then some people have to sit down and really prep some stories. Maybe you throw a couple details in there that didn't actually happen. I was wondering about your thought process when it comes up to coming up with ideas for some bits.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it will come from sort of weird, anytime there's a weird story that's just kind of locked away in the back of my head from growing up. I moved around, I think 8 or 9 times, and, lived all over the place from, the US to Switzerland and Australia. And I just had a lot of weird experiences that you bump into when you keep, going from place to place. And, every now and then something will like unlock a memory, and I'll be like, oh, that was pretty weird. That entire like town in Papua New Guinea like pranked my school group. Like that was a weird time. Or going to Switzerland and getting bullied for U.S. foreign policy. Is real. There's a lot of material that you can get from that.
Yeah, there was a comedian I once saw. I forget his name actually, but he was able to just pull stories from newspapers all over the U.S. and turn them into some of the funniest comedy bits I've ever seen. And I really think that was just a true art what he was able to do, because he didn't even have to necessarily think up his own material. He just took stories that were already reported and then added his own personal twist to it, which I think was pretty unique, because I don't think I see that often.
Yeah, there's a local guy, Justin McKinney, who does that a lot.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who there was one comic who was kind of like the originator of that. You can have originator, but he was famous for doing that on like late night shows.
Yeah.
I can see the clip in my head, and I just cannot remember the person's name.
For doing what?
Like doing a set where they just bring up the day's newspaper with them and do comedy based off of that.
Oh yeah, well there was always the nightly news, but I don't remember anybody that actually brought the paper up. But they're always topical stuff,
Yeah.
As for me, I could never write topical. Well, I shouldn't say I couldn't write topical. I do, and I write. I consider them throwaway jokes though. I had a mentor when I was early in my career that he didn't say don't write topical, but what he said was if you write topical, you're gonna spend a lot of time writing. He said, but if you and what I have found is that for me, it takes as much time for me to write a Trump joke as it does to write a joke about my mother-in-law or something. But a joke about my mother-in-law will work 10 years from now or 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't.
Right.
A Madonna joke is not going to work today. I could do that in 1995. So, it was good advice back in the day to understand at that time. So based on that, I've never really written topical except flow of the room stuff. Like when I'm in the room, you talk about something the last comic said or something weird about that's hanging on the wall, that sort of thing. Sorry, my mic's falling down here. But as for my writing inspiration, I get a lot in the shower. It's weird enough. And what's funny is that I talked to James Dorsey about this, Tyler, a couple weeks ago. He was like, me too. And so I guess I'm not alone with that like a good shower apparently brings on a lot of material. But I write a lot of absurd, but I also write a lot of stuff about, when I write things that are about me, they are and they aren't. So like I have a lot of stuff about my mental health stuff, and I have OCD and I have ADD, and that is true. But the jokes that I write are not necessarily things that I do. It's hard to, 1 in 5 jokes is an affliction a symptom I actually suffer from in the OCD, and the rest are meant to be relatable and funny. And, because if I say my OCD problems are stuffing things into baggies and worrying about how much earwax I have, it's not necessarily as relatable as some of the other things I could choose. So I often take the premise and then I write, because I'm not that clever. So I have to use like a lot of mechanics in that. So I'm more of a craftsman and a mechanic than I am like sort of super inspirational, like you'll see my jokes will often have a sort of, a written sort of structure to it. They're going to have a setup and a punchline. I mean, not like, jokey joke, but there's going to be a setup, there's going to be a punchline, there's going to be a tag, another tag, there's going to be a callback in 5 minutes to this joke, that it's righty,
Right.
Yeah.
But when I do have stories from my own life, they're sort of like half and half. Like I have a story about getting orthopedic shoes as a child, and I had to wear my shoes on the wrong feet because my feet were pigeon-toed. I had to wear my shoes on the wrong feet, and I asked my mom to get me the orthopedic shoes, and they're really ugly looking in that. She got them for me, but I still had to wear them on the wrong feet, and so the jokes that I tell about the things that happened to me while my shoes are on the wrong feet did not actually happen to me. But having to wear my shoes on the wrong feet, that did happen to me. So if you get my gist about like half and half.
Right.
So there's the premise might be real, and the jokes I tell about it are probably written.
Kind of similar to what Casey's saying. I have jokes talking about, I've got these really great and really beautiful stretch marks just all over my body. And I'll write jokes about that. And the one that I like to tell is about being on the beach and people on the beach noticing it. And they've never been noticed on the beach because people are always trying to look away from them. But it kind of taking a problem that you do have or something that does affect you, and then you can work it into something that becomes relatable or a funny situation. And that's definitely something I've done.
Yeah, like how much of your recently's actually happened? How much of your recently's,
Well, especially since the pandemic happened, it's hard to say, recently this happened, when recently I was not allowed out of my house.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. You had to do, especially not too long ago, recently. You guys have you ever heard Ray Harrington's Type 5? Ray Harrington's Type 5 is on the word recently. The comics use the word recently. And then he builds his whole set on this sort of recently callback thing. It's hysterical. He did, I don't remember if it was Conan or Kimmel. He did one of the late night things with it.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
It's funny. So, so for me, like my recently's never happened. I mean, I don't know if people are going to not like me now. They're going to, if anybody hears this interview and then sees my act, they go, this is not genuine. It's not organic at all. But no, so for example, my recently's and that they often come from what ifs. What if this happened right now? And then, I can't say what if because that makes a stupid joke. I have to make it recently. I observed.
Yeah.
And it's also a way that you can kind of, in your head, you imagine the worst case scenario of something happening, and it's not going to happen because that's the worst case scenario, but you can use that anxiety to create a joke about that scenario happening.
Yeah, right. Like I will often put headphones on and sing random songs, out loud or whatever. And I often wonder about the engagement I would have with somebody who would actually ask me about this,
Yeah.
And so it has never happened. So I just write the joke as if it did happen.
Yeah. I've actually taken to saying things like a month ago.
Yeah.
Or last year. Or whatever.
I think I want to try just getting really specific with it in the future. So instead of saying like recently or the other day, I'll say 4 hours and 38 minutes ago this happened.
Right.
Yeah.
On January 17th, 2019.
I actually just
6
saw,
in the morning.
I just saw Ian McDonald's set the other day, and he has a joke that is that specific. I don't want to ruin it for it on his channel, but
Yeah, don't burn his joke. But if Ian McDonald's a funny guy.
he is a funny guy. He said something like, I don't remember what the date was, something like, oh, that's exactly what happened on June 19th, 2012, or something, and it's just like, oh, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a real funny guy. Yeah.
I like your questions. You guys ask good questions.
Yeah.
I've always thought that there are like just certain comedians that are gifted with material either through the things that they've experienced in life or just because there's plenty of comics I've seen that have endless material about their childhood or something like that. One of my favorite comics of all time was the late John Panette, who, fun fact, actually went to UMass Lowell. He always had material. He could probably go on for hours just about, stories about his family and stories about dieting and stuff like that. So he didn't even have to reach a very broad range of material. He could sort of centerline everything and just talk about all of that for hours, which
He was amazing.
Yeah.
was always
Yeah,
interesting
he was.
because it still never got stale. He could talk about the same things, but it would still sound original and interesting.
I'll tell you somebody locally that does that, Zenobia Del Mar.
Yeah.
Zenobia
yeah.
Del Mar is somebody that writes a joke while she's on the bus, observing something on the bus, and she'll go up and tell it on stage. And the first time it will have very, 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 very few edits. Almost like the first time she tells it, like the way she tells it, like forever almost. She doesn't even, so she often acts like other comics shouldn't have to, like, I would tease her to her face about this. She often acts like other comics, shouldn't have to work on their stuff as hard because she doesn't.
Yeah.
She's just like, I just see it and I tell it, and that's the way it is, with her Wanda Sykes' voice,
Yeah.
And I'm like, that works for you, hon, but some of us actually have to write a joke out of this stuff.
It doesn't magically appear for everyone.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, not for the rest of us. I'm glad that happens for you. But I do catch her working on, because she and I ride the shows together a lot. So
Right.
we talk about the business and stuff. But I catch her working on her stuff, and she does work on it. But truly though, a lot of her stuff is just like, this is what I observed. This is what I thought about what I observed. This is the joke about what I thought about what I observed, and she'll get on stage and tell it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Joke done. Where I got to sit around going, what are a bunch of things about old ladies? Okay, they smell funny. They use Jergens. Like I have to make a category of things about old ladies and things about 7-Eleven so that I can make the joke about old ladies and 7-Eleven because, or whatever the weird thing is. It's likes. You know what I'm saying? When you're writing the it's likes, you got to say this, subject is like connector, right? Then what's the subject is like a blank. Then you have to have the ground. Why is it like that? Because blah, blah, blah. So I have to actually sit down and write a list of words that would go in those blanks where she just writes in her head and that's it.
Yeah, it's like you're going through the whole, like in math class in elementary school when they make you show your work, you're going through all the work.
Exactly.
And she's just dropping down the answers, and you're like, how did you get to the answer? You need to show your work. And nobody's just like, this is just the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, man. Where I'm like, God, I got 5 pages of, scribbles to turn in on this.
I've got 5 pages of notes, and I've got a half hour of going to open mics and having people dead eye stare me, not understanding what I said.
Yep.
Yeah, so I got 4 more months of working on the joke till I get the timing and the beats and the wording just right. I have a couple of jokes I have been telling seriously. When I came back to doing comedy and whatever it was, late 2017, early 2018, I realized really quickly, I had to write a new act. Even though I never wrote topical stuff, I had a couple classic bits, but there was not that much in my 30 minutes from 1994 that I could use anymore, or that I wanted to, because it just didn't feel relevant. So I had to basically, write a whole new act. And so I've had to go through this process, and I understand what it's like to actually have to sit down there and write. Takes a while.
It is not a quick process.
No, and half of the process is going up and having it fail a bunch of times.
Well, yeah, and even though I wrote some of these things like in early 2017, 2018, there's a couple jokes that I only just made work the best ever. These jokes have been in my recent tight 5, and yet I just tweaked them right to make them work.
Yeah, I have jokes like that.
And yet I still have some jokes that I'm like, I can't figure out why. I got this one particular joke. 50% of the time it kills, and 50% of the time it dies. There is absolutely nothing in between to gauge it by. I cannot, and I tell it exactly the same way every time, so I can't figure out why I'm not selling this to everybody.
You gotta flip a coin when you get on stage, and then tell it. And then whatever the coin landed on, if it went well for the future, you'll just always flip the coin. If it lands on heads or tails, you'll either do the joke or you won't.
I like that.
Let fate decide.
Yes.
That's great. Until fate betrays me and gives me the heads, and then it still bombs.
Well, that's when you get into quarter.
But until then, hopefully I'll keep rolling the right now.
Yeah.
And they just move to more quarters. Just keep building it out until you're doing more statistics than comedy.
I'll tell you this though. I will say this unsolicited. Now we're down to writing our own questions, Chris. I will say this, that there's one thing that I admire Zenobia Del Mar for beyond probably any other thing, and she often holds me at fault when a set doesn't go well for failing to do this thing. Zenobia Del Mar, like, I get up and tell jokes. More often than not, I tell jokes. It's pretty clear my deal is an act. It's pretty clear I've written these jokes for you, and I'm presenting these are my songs. I'm an artist. This is my presentation to you. Zenobia gets up and has conversations with the audience. She just has conversations. And all of her jokes are being told, but they're being told as though she's having a cup of tea with you. And she thinks everybody can tell their jokes that way. You know, and she doesn't insult me directly. Like, what she'll say is, I think good comedy looks like this. And she describes something that she does, right? Then she'll go, what you do looks like this. Because a good comedy looks like this. What you do looks like this. So what you're saying is my thing is, no, I'm not saying it. Yeah, you are. So I have found, though, whenever I'm able to slow down, put a little bit more illusion of spontaneity in it, my stuff goes better. You know, sometimes it depends on the audience, but by and large, the more it's about engagement. You can get that engagement in different ways. You don't have to do it that way. And, you know, I have kind of explained to her, you got to have your likability and your thing and your deal in order for everybody to, you know, in order for all that to fit true. Yeah. But the essence of what she's saying is about engagement. And the slower I go and the more personable I get, the better that engagement is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We'll have conversations, don't tell jokes. That's her advice.
Right.
It's funny that you bring up audience, though, because Bill Burr once did a whole thing about how he would tell jokes sort of making fun of the military, and he would perform it at a VFW, and it would be a huge hit. And then he would go perform it just at a regular comedy club, and people would be like, I don't know if I'm supposed to laugh at that or not, so it's really just a dead room. So it's sort of the opposite of what you'd actually expect.
A lot of the time it is.
Yeah, a lot of times it is. And Bill Burr is an oddity in and of himself, another goat, you know, because he's one of the only guys that he could tell a joke 5,000 comics would be canceled for, and he will not be because he writes so brilliantly.
Absolutely.
I mean, he can tell a race joke, he can tell a misogyny joke, he can, you know, and he's never punching down. And whoever he is joking about is usually laughing the most.
Right.
Yeah.
He's that good, you know. So that's what he's saying is like, you know, what he's saying without saying it, because he's a pretty humble guy anyways, I write so well that the relatable people, the soldiers, they get jokes. But the other people, you know, they're not intimate enough with it, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that always kind of feels like the biggest tell is if the people that the joke is about think it's funny, you know, because if the audience of the joke is the people who are the subject of the joke and they enjoy it, then it has to be a good and solid joke. Mm-hmm. You know, there's something about, you know, it means you've really hit a chord on, or struck a chord on the subject, or you know, what have you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and with Bill Burr, like, even if he says something that might be construed or could be construed or as, you know, controversial or culturally appropriated or whatever, it's so spot on all the time that, you know, it's like, you got me, you know, it's like, it's true enough that people, it's undeniable. What he's saying is undeniable, so you can't go, that's punching down or whatever. He's like, no, it's not. It's an actual factual observation.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We should probably wrap up shortly, but thank you guys so much for doing this. I'm excited to work with you guys in a week. The show is January 23rd at 8 p.m. at One Broadway Collaborative. If you want more information on that, you can go to onebroadway.org or any of our social medias. I'm Maxwell Schultz. This is Tyler Durniak and Casey McNeal. I was going to say Casey Comedy because that's what your thing says. And
that's
I was like,
fine.
that's not.
Follow me that way.
You follow him at Casey Comedy. That's right. But thank you,
Yeah, thanks for having us.
of course, and I'll see you in a week.
All right, see you there.
All right,
Bye.
take care.